Well, hey, people. Okay, so I'm a historian by nature. So to do the history of textiles in a few minutes is going to be more challenging than I thought, but let's go for it. The basic needs of human beings are food, water, shelter, and clothing. And textile production started literally from the dawn of man. So that's what we're going to talk about in the first couple of slides. We're just going to talk about the earliest textile production from ancient civilization. Okay, so let's start with the Egyptians. The Egyptians actually cultivated flax, the flax plant, which is basically a grass, and developed a way to process that flax into fiber, which we know as linen. So linen is one of the oldest textiles that there is in the world. The linen that the Egyptians produced was so fine in some instances that it's still, to this day, contemporary textile development cannot figure out how they made it. I mean, it's amazing to me. The average mummy was wrapped in linen, and it could be up to 2 miles on one mummy. The Egyptians weren't alone, though, in their ancient textile production. Simultaneously in ancient South America, and in ancient India, we still can't figure out why, these two places simultaneously, the cultivation of cotton also began. And the cotton fiber, so cotton is a plant. The cotton fiber, both civilizations developed a way to make it into a yarn. And after they made it into a yarn, they wove it into a textile. And specifically in India, we have a lot of historical documents that talks about Indian cotton. Not only the production of, not just the cultivation of the cotton plant or the production of the yarn, but also the spinning of fine cotton cloth. We can't leave Asia out, right? One of the other earliest textiles that was ever produced was the cultivation of silk. Cultivation of silk is known as sericulture. And the cultivation of silk in China actually was a state secret. It was a closely held product that was controlled in part by the emperor. Silk produced in China left China and made its way west to ultimately to the Mediterranean along what was known as the Silk Road. And the Silk Road isn't a road. It is a series of trading routes that took goods from China and took them west to the Mediterranean and took items west to the east. And on that stop on the Silk Road were, guess where? India and Egypt. So as a result, cotton and spices from India were taken along west on the western route, going to Egypt and ultimately to the Mediterranean. And items from the west were brought back through India and China as well. Through Egypt and India as well, which brought linen the other way. Along with ancient Egypt, India, and China, ancient Greece and Rome also produced textiles as well. And the goddess Hera is credited with being the first woman to spin wool. Producing wool textiles included the shearing of the sheep, the combing of the fiber so it could be spun into yarn, woven into to a textile, and then ultimately made into a garment. So whenever you see an image like this of someone wearing a toga, they're generally wearing an undergarment that is linen or cotton, and then the overgarment, the top garment, is actually made of wool. By the time we get to ancient Rome, textile production was a cottage industry, right? There actually were factories that just produced wool garments. And many of the middle class were skilled craftsmen, artisans who just created textiles. So by the time we get to the Middle Ages, Egypt is still continuing its production of linen, India's production of cotton. The practice of sericulture has escaped China. There's an interesting story about that. Has escaped China and is also being produced in the West, as well as mass quantities of wool textiles. By the time we get to the Renaissance, specific Italian towns such as Florence and Milan were known for their textile weaving. And in the Middle Ages is where textiles really came into their own. And many of the ornate images that came from the East, that came from India and China, were woven into brocade and wool fabrics that are reminiscent of the Renaissance period. As we move out of the 17th century and move to the founding of the United States, many of you know that one of the cash crops for the United States actually was the cultivation of cotton. That unfortunately was the reason why most Africans were enslaved, for the cultivation of crops, including crops that produce the textiles of cotton. While the U.S. had the unfortunate practice of slavery still continuing, there were some developments in the production of textiles due to some inventions and the dawn of the Industrial Revolution. As we move to more mechanized systems for production of most things that we use, textiles wasn't spared. And the first factories and some of the biggest industries for the United States were initially in textiles. In 1890, of the 110 largest corporations, over 80 of them produced textiles. As the Industrial Revolution progressed, the production of textiles became a major manufacturing category in the United States. And I'm going to leave it here for now. There's a video that I'm going to have you watch about what happened to American textile and apparel production.